The Commission resumes. General Major is nog steeds on the 8th. Mr. Mpofu.
General still on oath.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, General.
Good morning.
I'd like us just to tidy up a few of the points that we covered yesterday before starting on a new topic. There was the debate that you witnessed between myself and the chairperson regarding the definition of offensive measures. Now, I don't want to criticize you later for something that you did not say. So I want to get it very clearly. Are you telling this commission that the firing of live ammunition does not, despite those definitions and so on, does not fall under the rubric of offensive measures? It's a positive statement.
Voorzitter, dit is correct. Dit is niet deel van offensieve maatregels nie.
It's correct, Mr. Chairperson, does not fall under the offensive definition of offensive measures.
So, in respect of the definition, which I've also found somewhere else, which includes the use of firearms as offensive measures, your testimony is that it's once that draft is adopted, it will be the first time ever that the use of firearms will be regarded as offensive measures.
Voorzitter, nee, selfs as die konsep goedgekeur word, sal vuurwapens nie deel van 'n offensiewe maatreëls wees nie. As ek die dokument kan kry, kan ons dit verder lees in konteks en ek is seker daar's 'n pertinente uitsluiting daar.
Mr. Chairperson, even if the draft could be approved, even if the draft can be approved, it would not mention firearms as part of the offensive measures. If I could get the document and read it clearly out.
Die pertinente vuurwapen wat daarna verwys sal wees halgeweer met gebruik van rubber, want halgeweer is ook 'n vuurwapen.
The firearm referred to would be the shotgun, because a shotgun uses rubber. It's also referred to as a firearm.
Into ebinothikelo xwebhu oloke uthetha ngalo elinobhekisa kuyo ke imibhaxa umsebenzisa irabha ngoba nayo liwela phansi koluhlu lwemipu.
Okay. So at least we are in agreement that excuse me, the use of rubber bullets is part of offensive measures.
Uvumelana ke ukuba usetyenziswa kwembumbulu zerabha inxalenye yenyathelo lamapolisa kuhlaselwa okanye kwiphulo lawo.
Voorzitter, is correct, ja, rubber is deel van offensief en dan
That is correct, Chairperson. Rubber bullets part of offensive measures.
Nyan leyo imbumbulu zerabha inxalenye ke le kunyathelo ke la mapolisa xa esenza uphulo lawo.
Dus ik kan verwijzen naar bewijsstuk G 21.
May I refer to G 21, Mr. Chairperson?
Uyawucela ujonge phaa ku G 21.
Ik weet niet of het een bewijsstuk, ik zie dus gekrap hier op G 21, maar ik weet niet of dit een bewijsstuk nummer toegekend is, niet voorzitter.
I don't know if it's scratched, but GGG 21, I don't know if it's been handed in already as an exhibit, Mr. Chairman.
Die document is National Instruction, en dan nog niet een nummer nie, of 2012.
It's triple G 21.
Dank u, voorzitter.
Triple G 21 is the exhibit number.
Uyatsho ke ukuba inambolo ke ukuleyo yasiboniso okanye ubungqina ku Triple G 21 ethetha nge-national instructions.
Voorsitter, dan gemerk deur die op die bladsy bo 000565 of dan die bladsy aan die voetnota is bladsy 16 van 21.
Page 16 of 21 is underneath at the bottom.
Ngezantsi ke kubhalwe uphepha u16 apha ke ku21.
En dan pertinent paragraaf 5
Pertinently paragraph 5,
sub B.
section B.
Okay, whatever. Yeah.
Ke uparagraph 5 pha ku B.
But
Voorsitter, as ek net kan aanhaal,
If I could just quote Ms. Chairperson.
Ukuba ke ndingayikota le ndibhaliweyo apho.
use of the following are prohibited or restricted during crowd management operations. En dan onder B, firearms and sharp ammunition, including birdshot, fine lead pellets in brackets, and buckshot, small lead pellets in brackets are prohibited.
Uyatsho ke ngokuba ezi azivunyelwe ngaba zingasetyenziswa agqiba uzitsho ngokuba kumiphu imbumbulu zentsimbi kwakunye ke ngoku nezazibiza i-buckshot kwakunye nezi ke sizibiza i-pellets.
And sub 6, the approved
Section 6.
rubber rounds may only be used as offensive measures to disperse a crowd in extreme circumstances if less forceful methods have proved to be ineffective.
Uthi ke ngoku imbumbulu ke ngoku ezi zerabha zingakwazi ukusebenza xa imeko imaxongo ingakumbi ke ngoku eminye imigudu abathe bayenza befumanisa uba zonke inzame zabo ziphanzile.
yes,
Sorry, what document are you quoting now?
262, I think.
No,
At least that also appears in
the
262.
wording differs from 262. It's essentially the same.
It's the same
meaning as
content,
262,
yes, but maybe
it sounds like an expansion of some kind. I just want to know what it is.
Okay.
So that is die konsep nasionale instruksie
It's the concept national instructions, Ms. Chairperson.
getitel Public Order Police, Crowd Regulation and Management during Public Gatherings and
So is it an
Demonstrations.
exhibit number? Has it got an exhibit number? Not an exhibit.
Oh, I see. Is this?
I thought. Yes, I didn't think it was an exhibit. Do you want to have it made an exhibit, Mr.
Yes, Chairperson. Is that the draft from which I quoted the
Yes, it's a
definition?
draft. Yes, he says it's a draft.
Yes, that's the one that I quoted, the definition of offensive
National
measures. from.
instruction on what? On crowd management.
Yes, Chairperson. I'll just give you the actual heading.
Well, it sounded like draft national instruction on crowd management.
Yes,
Is that
I
correct?
did say it yesterday on the record for Mr. Matlanga, but
Is it in English or Afrikaans?
it's
in
called
English.
National Instruction.
2012. National instructions
Is
2012.
that the one, General? National Instruction of 2012, Public Order, Police, Crowd Regulation and Management during public gatherings and demonstrations.
Dit is korrek, Voorsitter.
Yes, it is
That's
that.
correct, Ms. Chairperson, yes.
And while you are there,
I'm sorry. I just want to understand what's going on. This document headed National Instruction. National Instruction hash
Yes.
of 2012. I think the hash indicates it's a draft.
Yes.
Because I don't know what the number is going to be. Public Order Police, Crowd Regulation and Management during public gatherings and demonstrations. And it is, as the witness said, it has 21 pages. It also says issued by consolidation notice hash 2012. So this is a draft. It hasn't been approved yet.
That's
Korrek,
correct,
Voorsitter.
Chairperson.
So if you want it an exhibit, then we'll make it an exhibit.
do.
All right. The next number then is
22?
22, Chair. Triple G
22. Right.
Triple
So
G 22.
this is your copy, is it, Major General?
Correct,
So you won't mind my writing on it exhibit G 22. We'll give it back to you, and then copies will be made for all those who are interested in having full sets of the exhibits. So it's exhibit G 22. All right. So I think that now clarifies that. Now you say that document has a section dealing with offensive.
Yes, in the definition section, which is section 2N for Nelly.
Kuthethwa ke ngolu xwebhu olulapha olungekagunyaziswa ngekavunyelwa into yoba malisetyenziswe kodwa kulapho kuxutywa khona ngoku kuthiwa ke lamkelwa ke apha ke
So it's
njengobungqina
paragraph 2N for Nelly.
Yes.
So I see it refers to pyrotechnics, so that's stun grenades.
Yeah.
Onder andere, voorsitter, is
Maar
ook
is earlier, yes.
donderbuise kan ook deel van dit wees, CS, gas, so
Tear gas as well.
so ook alles pyrotechnisch.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
uyatsho ke ngoku kwizinto ezisetyenziswayo kuye kwaxhasa ke nebhom
I mean, just
leyo
for-
thusayo kunye negesi le ililisayo.
And
And just for clarity, paragraph 14, 14.5 says the use of the following are prohibited or restricted during crowd management operations. Now, there's something similar in the wording of
Word for word.
of the standing order
262.
262, but I think you'll find the wording is expanded here, but it's essentially the same meaning. Right.
Yes.
So
it's essentially the same, Chairperson. That's exactly my point. That the only thing, according to your evidence, is that this would be the first time ever that the use of firearms is regarded as offensive measures. And one. Two, that do you agree or don't you agree that just as pyrotechnics include stun grenades under firearms would also include the shotguns for rubber bullets, but it also includes live ammunition. Firearms.
Njengoba ke ngoku bose usichazile ezinye into yokuba kwezi bezibiza ngesi pyrotechnics ibhom leyo thusayo kunye negesi lilisayo ziwela ngaphansi kwazo xa uthethwa ke ngoku ngemipu ke ngoku babhekisa kwimibhaxa leyo kusetyenziswa kuyo imbambulo zerabha kwakunye nezi zentsimbi imbombulo.
Voorsitter, nee, dit sal nie die eerste keer wees nie, want vuurwapens wat skerpend ammunisie afvuur is steeds uitgesluit.
No, Mr. Chairperson, it wouldn't be the first time because
I read that subparagraph.
firearms that use sharp ammunition are excluded.
Of course, at Marikana on the 16th, stun grenades were used, were they not? And tear gas.
Kokgranate was gebruik en CS, dis reg.
Was the
Yes,
warning
stun
given
grenades
before?
and tear gas
before
was
that?
used.
Ook waterkanonne, dis korrek.
Also, water
Warning
cannons.
given?
Ek het nie gehoor
Was
nie.
a warning given? Those are offensive measures. You will accept under in terms of the definition.
Dis reg, voorsitter.
That's correct, Mr. Chairperson.
And a warning should be given before offensive measures are used. Now, was a warning given before these were used?
Ndafuna iqonde ke ngoku sihlalo into yokubana njengoba kuthiwa ke ngoku kwinyathelo lophula
As far as you know, I know you weren't on the scene, but
Voorsitter,
Sien jy
nee,
sê-
soos ek verstaan, as gevolg van die aanval was daar nie 'n geleentheid nie. In terme van die plan sou daar na die defensief sou daar 'n waarskuwing wees as gevolg van die aanval.
so what you're saying is,
In
strictly
terms of
speaking,
the-
a warning should have been given, but it wasn't because there wasn't an opportunity to do so. That's your case. Is that correct?
Dis reg, voorsitter.
That's correct, Chairperson.
Uthi ke
Warning should
ngoku-
have been given, but because of the disruption, it was not.
Voorsitter,
uthi ke ngoku kwakufuneke kulumkiswe apho kodwa ngenxa yokuba kwakho uphazamiseka zange ikwazi ukwenzeka loo nto leyo.
as ek net kan verder gaan met paragraaf N
If I could proceed with paragraph N, Chairperson.
Bandinoqhubeka phaa kuparagraph N
op triple G 222 onder definisies.
Triple G 22.
bako triple G 22
To responding with firearms moet saamgelees word
The responding firearms should be read together with
met paragraaf 14 in hakies 5 in hakies B.
paragraph 14.5b.
En dit is 'n konsep dokument
The concept document.
en om alle onduidelikheid die weg te ruim sal hierdie pertinente definisie dan ook noodwendig moet in die definisie verander word om dan uitsluiting te gee aan skerpend ammunisie.
This definition would then have to be included in the draft document to exclude the use of a sharp ammunition.
apha ke ngoku kweli xwebhu kule ndawo ugqiba ufunda kuyo uthi le ndawo xa bezichaza ifuneke babonise into yoba abazifaki okanye ezimbumbulu zentsimbi.
Okay, well, that's your reason for saying that it doesn't apply. Of course, that would be true if 14.5 posited a total prohibition on live ammunition. It does not. You see that paragraph 5 says the use of the following are prohibited or restricted.
You go on, Mr. Mpofu, you'll see that if you're reading from subparagraph 5, the use of following are prohibited or restricted during crowd management operations.
Yeah.
Pepper spray is prohibited unless firearms and sharp ammunition are prohibited, and tear gas may be used only by POP members on command of the operational commander. So, in other words, tear gas is restricted, pepper spray is restricted because it's prohibited unless the relevant commander has issued a specific instruction, but firearms and sharp ammunition, including birdshot and buckshot, are prohibited, and there's no provision which provides for its use in exceptional circumstances. So the opening words, the use of the following are prohibited or restricted, it becomes clear when one has regard to the three sub-paragraphs A, B, and C. A and C are effectively examples of restriction, and B appears to be a case of an absolute prohibition.
That's fine.
But I don't want to unduly stop you.
No,
but we're now debating the meaning of a draft instruction. If the draft instruction had been in force at the time, and we were applying it to see whether it had been complied with, I would let you proceed. But I don't know that our time is being gainfully used in examining the meaning of a draft instruction. Basically, what you're trying to establish is the word offensive measures, as used in the standing order, includes the use of as a definition, includes the use of sharp ammunition.
Yeah.
I think, if I may say so, whether that argument is correct or not can be determined later, but I don't know there's any further evidence that you need put before us in order to be able to mount an argument, one way or the other, as to what the word expression means in Standing Order 262.
Well,
so if I'd be inclined to suggest you to move on to another point.
Yeah, Chairperson, please, before I do that, let me just say, the witness has said that the use of rubber bullets, as they're commonly referred to, is part of offensive measures. That much is established. Now, if, with your permission, I'd like to ask him whether, do you agree that in policing there's no distinction that is drawn between rubber bullets and live ammunition?
Ukuba apha epoliseni akho mahluko wenziwayo phakathi kokusetyenziswa kwembumbulu zerabha nezentsimbi.
Voorsitter, ek verstaan nie die vraag in algemene terme van policing nie.
I don't understand the term use in the general use of the term policing.
Okay. Well,
I think what he means is sharp ammunition is generally verboten and rubber bullets are equally verboten. You understand the German?
Neither is
acceptable. I think that's the point he's making from a policing point of view. Is that right, Mr. Mpofu?
Yes, whether as a policing method there's a distinction exists between rubber and sharp ammunition.
Voorsitter, ek kan net verwys na Standaard Order 262 wat daar 'n duidelike onderskeid is.
Yes or no?
I can only refer to Standing Order 262 where there's a definite distinction.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's not as simple as that, because there was what we called a gloss later on the Standing Order, which is the instruction issued by the National Commissioner in July 2012. And my understanding was that was far more restrictive in the case of rubber bullets and balls and so on than the case had been previously. So it goes beyond 262 as it stands by itself, because apparently cases have been experienced of people who were seriously injured by rubber bullets, hence the need to move forward, and hence the issue of that instruction by the National Commissioner. Isn't that so?
Uthi ke kwakubona ke into ezazibangelwa ke ngizimbumbulu zerabha ngela xesha kwakukhutshwe ixwebhu ke ngu-National Commission oba bazingasetyenziswa nokonzakala ebantwini, ayikho njalo lonto leyo?
Voorsitter, maar die gebruik van rubber was nog altyd 'n laaste uitweg. Het was net weer eens bevestig deur die nasionale kommissaris.
Mr. Chairperson, the use of rubber was the last resort. It was just emphasized again by the National Commissioner.
Ukusetyenziswa kwembumbulu zerabha yayiba linyathelo lokugqibela njengoba waye wayigxininisa naye unjengele lonto leyo.
General, you know I've not done this to you before, but on this time I really would like a yes or no answer. You can elaborate as much as you like after that. I'm asking you a simple question. In policing matters regarding POP and crowd management and so on, is there any distinction between the use of rubber bullets and live ammunition in the context of the use of force? Yes or no?
Into ebendifuna
Mr.
uyiqonda
Paul, can
kuyo
I just
ukuba
understand that question? Do you mean anything in the standing orders, anything in the legislation, or anything in the actual usage on the field? What is the
I don't
context?
know. In policing practice.
I'm sorry, Mr. Moore, I understand you mean the current police practice.
Yes.
The light at 262 and
Everything
subsequent
else.
instruction and the subsequent instruction from the National Commissioner.
Yes,
That's
and
your
the
question.
Constitution
The
and
answer
whatever.
is either yes or no, but obviously the witness will then have an opportunity to amplify as to why he says what he says.
uthi ke umbuzo impendulo ayifunayo ngu okanye ngohayi uthi apha ekulalweni kwezihlelo ufuna uqonda uba ukhona umahluko owenziwayo ngamapolisa ekusebenziseni kwabamandla wabo ingakumbi xa kusetyenziswa iimbumbulu zerabha nezentsimbi na.
Voorsitter, die antwoord is ja, daar is 'n verskil.
The answer is yes, Mr. Chairperson, there is a difference.
Impendulo ndithi ukhona umahluko.
Vuurwapens, daar word pertinent verwys na die gemeenregtelike beginsels van selfverdediging, noodweer en beskerming van eiendom.
Firearms refers to the common law concept of private and self-defense and the protection of property.
Terwyl rubber as 'n laaste uitweg is, 'n laaste fase in terme van die uiteendryf van 'n skare.
Rubber as the last resort in the crowd management.
Utshilo ke ngokuba impendulo yakhe wathi ke ngoku xa ethetha ke ngembumbulu ezi uthi ke ngoku imipu isetyenziswa ke ngoku apho kukhuselwa khona naxa ukhusela ke ngoku isakhiwo okanye indawo uthi ke ngoku usetyenziswa kwerabha ke ngoku xa kulawulwa izihlwele funeka ibe linyathelo lokugqibela elo.
I think that calls for cake, Chairperson.
Notionally still in the chair, I was just going to fetch a file.
Thank you.
You've got the witness's answer.
Yes, I did. Thank you, General. Well, I put it to you that you are busy contradicting yourself now. When you were asked that exact question by Mr. Semenya, your answer was not yeah, it was near.
Uthi ndiyaxelela ke ngokuba uthetha usiphikisa ngokuba ngexesha bobuzwe umbuzo ke ngumhlekazi uSimenya zange uthi ewe xa uphendula wathi hayi.
What is your answer?
Uthini kuloo nto ke leyo?
Can you please refer us to the transcript?
Okay, I will kindly do so. If you go to 8434, examination by Mr. Semenya SC continued. We have just handled, General, the use of force by POP members. Is there anything between the use of rubber and the use of sharp ammunition in policing? Voorzitter, as ek kyk na die continuum van gebeurt, dan sal ons merk dat die heel laste facet is. What? Then Chairperson says, have we finished with Mr. White's report and so on? Then Mr. Semenya says, yes. Chair, the criticism there, Mr. White, is that obviously beyond POP, and the next thing that happens is sharp ammunition. The point I'm trying to make, is there anything in policing, not in self-defense, in policing, that exists as a policing measure between rubber and sharp ammunition? General Major Annandale, voorzitter, en politie rang weet ek nie, maar in die Suid-Afrikaanse politiediens, polisieering context, nee.
The policing context, no. That was the last word.
Uthi xa ethetha ngaphantsi komxholo ke ubupolisi wathi hayi.
And that was, I can't remember, on the 24th of April. And today your answer is yeah.
Voorsitter, die vraag was verskillend geweest. Die ander een was of daar 'n stap tussen die gebruik van rubber en vuurwapens is in polisieering, en ek te sê daar's niks tussen die twee nie. Nou het ek die onderskeid verduidelik, so daar's nie 'n dis verskillende vrae.
These are different questions, Mr. Chairperson.
I'm sorry, actually I read the question almost from Mr. Semenya's question, just so that you don't have that escape route.
Ndifunda umbuzo kwaka mhlekazi uSimenya kwenzela into yoba ungakwazi ukuba le nto uyibale uthi uyayibaleka.
Verskil ek stem nie, voorsitter, ek stem nie saam nie.
I don't agree with this, Mr. Chairperson.
Okay, now we'll move on. That's fine, we'll leave it for argument. The next issue is, and as I say, we'll leave it for argument. I honestly don't believe that we are debating whether the use of live ammunition is offensive or not. But be that as it may, we'll move to the next important issue that you and I discussed yesterday was the issue of barbed wire. Would you agree with the following statement? That if it's established that that line of semi-automatic rifle-wielding policemen that was formed in front of the gap that you and I discussed yesterday was formed before any attack was mounted by anybody, then that line was formed for something else other than self-defense, because you can't have self-defense if there's no attack.
Uvumelana nami into yokuba ke ngoku ngexesha amapolisa ayisenze umgqaphayana ephethe inantsika imipule idubula izitshintsha ukuba bame phakala ndawo ngaphambi kokuba kubekho uhlaselo noba lenziwa ngubani na uthi ke ngoku besingenawutsho into yobana abantu bebenza njalo bebesenza ngokuzikhusela.
Nee, daar's nie 'n vraag gevra nie, voorsitter.
There has been no question asked, Mr.
Well,
Chairperson.
it's a question. Would you agree means there's a question. Would you agree that, at the end of that, there must be a question mark here. Would you agree that if that line was formed before any attack of any sort was mounted, then it was formed in front of that gap for a purpose other than self-defense, whatever the purpose was, because there was no attack at that stage. You can't have self-defense if there's no attack.
Into ayitshoyo ke into yokuba ukuba ke ngoku lo mgca makuwo kungekabikho uhlaselo ke ngoku isizathu soba bame kulo mgca lowo kwakungenxa yesinye isizathu kungenxa yokuba befuna ukuzikhusela.
So dis ten tye van die klein groepie nog steeds gegroepeer sonder dat hulle eerste beweging gedoen het op die polisielyn.
Is that what you're saying, that the small grouping was still grouped there before they approached the police line?
No, I don't care where they were. All I'm saying is that they were not attacking anybody at that stage. At the stage when that line was formed, as depicted in the picture that you pointed us to at 10:51, where the basic line, quote unquote, is formed, and there are no protesters in sight in that picture, at least.
Uthi ngela xesha akakhathali ke into baba bephi bona abantu babeqhankqalaza ngoba ngeli xesha bebonakala besenza umgca ke ngoku phaa kwividiyo babonakali bona abantu baqhankqalazayo ngela xesha.
Voorsitter, soos ek dit het die TRT beweeg van hulle agterste posisie so wat 100 meter agter die voorste twee linies van gepantserde voertuie.
As I understand it, Mr. Chairperson, the TRT moved from a distance of about 100 meters behind the armored vehicles.
Ke ngoku into endiyaziyo into yokuba bahamba imi-inter ezilikhulu abe-TRT besuka kwezaa nqwelo ke ngoku zixhotyisiweyo.
En dat hulle beweging was as gevolg van die eerste beweging van die groep op die polisielyn by Nyala 4.
And their movement as such was as a result of the forward movement of the armed group in front of the Nyala vehicle.
Into yenza uba basuke bahambe kuloo ndawo ngeli xesha babembona ke ngoku eli qela lalixhobele lihamba lisiya phaa ngakwiihipo.
So of hulle aanvanklik beweeg het om 'n ondersteuning te wees van die lede voor of as 'n afskrikmiddel in terme van addisionele magsvertoon, dit weet ek nie.
Whether their movement forward was as a result of protecting that group or the show of force, I wouldn't be able to say.
Nawutsho into yobana mhlawumbi ukuya kwabo phambili babefuna ukukhuselela qela okanye babefuna ukubonisa amandla wabo na andiyazi.
Yes. So the answer is yes then, because Whatever it is, show of force, what have you, all I'm saying is that if you look at slide 210, the last picture, where there's a line formed facing the gap, and in which there are no protesters in sight, even though you can see the crawl, 210, the last one. I'm asking you a simple question. Would you agree that the formation of that line with those people holding semi-automatic rifles must have been for a purpose other than self-defense? Because there was clearly nobody in sight, and even on the police version, no attack had yet been
mounted. Kwesi slide othetha ngaso ngexesha benze lo mgca kwangekabikho uhlaselo lwenziwayo ngelaa xesha.
Chair, slide 210.
210, sorry.
The last one, it's after. You can even see the bodies are lying on the ground there.
The time is obscured by the
51.
by the 210, but it looks as if it's 1551.
Yes, no, Chair, okay, let's assume Mr. Semenya is right. It doesn't matter. The point I'm making is simply that, would you agree that, okay, let's take one step back. Would you agree that the basic line or the calls for basic line were made before an attack, quote unquote, on the police version was launched?
Ke ngoku uvumelana into yokuba ke ngoku amapolisa aqala ama umgca phambi kokuba kwenziwe uhlaselo njengoba besitsho amapolisa.
Chair, can we have this conversation with witnesses who are on the police line? They will tell us more accurately at what point they formed it, why they formed it, and Mr. Mpofu can have a meaningful conversation.
There's substance in that point. In other words, the suggestion is not that you should be stopped from asking the question, but that you should rather ask someone who will be able to give a more definitive answer than this witness, who has to rely partly on hearsay and partly on material before us in the form of photographs and videos and so on.
Yeah.
So, regarding the need to use the time gainfully, I don't propose stopping you from asking the question, but I suggest keep the question for someone who can give us with all deference to the witness, a better answer than this witness can.
No, Chairperson, that's a sensible suggestion, but it's thick coming from Mr. Semenya. The only reason I'm raising this is because he asked this witness about those things in chief. But that's fine. I'll move on.
Don't pick unnecessary fights, please.
Well, if it wasn't raised in chief, I wouldn't be cross-examining it, so he should have taken his own advice. Okay, now can we move to the issue of I won't ask you about the specifics of who stood where at whatever time. But what I do want to establish with you is
Lambuzo besawubuza ke ngoku uadvocate Mpofu kuthiwa uzobuza amanqina abephaa ngelaa xesha azawukwazi uba bacacise kakuhle ingakumbi le nto yokuma indlela abame ngayo kwimigca.
If the chair will bear with me, sorry. I've got the document I'm looking for, but I have another version which is underlined. I'm looking for that.
Finally, perhaps those assisting you can find it, and you can move on to another point in the meanwhile.
Yeah. No, Chair, then I'll find it here. It's just going to be more difficult. In terms of, thank you, Chairman. In terms of F1, I'm just going to read a lot of passages and then I'll ask you the question.
Zawufunda into ezininzi ke ngoku eziphaa ku F1 emva koko ndibuza imibuzo.
In terms of F1, 5.2.3 thereof. It says, should negotiations fail, the next step would be to contain the situation, underline this, to protect critical points and non-participant through the implementation of defensive measures.
Forgive me, Mr. Mpofu, I was trying to find my copy. What page?
It's page 9, typed page 9, 5.2.3, Chairperson. Is it? Oh. 5.2.3, the very last
Thank
point.
you.
I've just read the first part of 5.2.3. So defensive measures. We agree defensive measures in the Marikana context means barbed wire, among other things, correct?
Uthi ke ngoku njengoba xa kuthiwa uthethathethwano xa luphantsa inyathelo lokuqala ukuba mabazokuthatha ke ngoku ulawulo apho ukukhusela ke ngoku indawo ezo zibalulekileyo nabo bangathathi inxaxheba xa bezosebenzisa inyathelo labo lokhuselo ufuna uqonda uba uthetha nangokusetyenziswa kocingo oluhlabayo kuloo ndawo na.
Onder andere dis korrek.
Yes.
Amongst others, yes. That's correct.
Enye ikwanjalo.
And then on the next page it says, in these types of operations, it is important to maintain a distance between the demonstrators and subs or POP personnel by means of non-violent methods.
Uthi ke ngoku kolu hlobo ke ngoku lemisebenzi yenziwa ngamapolisa kubalulekile into yoba kubekho umgama ozokwenza ngamapolisa phakathi kwawo kunye nabaqhankqalazi ngokuba basebenzise indlela apho bangasebenzisa idushe khona.
In other words, I'm going to argue that that means that if one wanted to protect the so-called enclosed area, it would be important to do that by means of non-violent methods as a priority. Would you agree?
Ukuba ke ube nifuna ukukhusela la ndawo leya ivaliweyo pha bekufuneka niyenze loo nto ningasebenzisi idushe into enzayo itsho kwingxoxompikiswano uvumelana nam kuloo nto leyo.
Dis dan juist die afstand wat ons gehad het, die 80 meter plus dan die draad.
That is the distance we had, the 80 meters plus the barbed wire.
Zimitha ezi-8 sasinazo kunye nocingo oluhlabayo.
Yes. And then it then says,
I don't think the answer was interpreted into isi also.
oh yes, sorry, Chairperson.
I have interpreted, Commissioner.
So
bendithe ke ngoku yiloo nto besinocingo oluhlabayo kunye neemitha eziya zi-80.
And before I move on, that requirement is also mimicked or carried through in Regulation 262, and I'm now going to read you, put your finger on that one, we're going to come back to it. I'm going to read you 11.2 of Regulation 262.
Standing order.
Standing order 262. Thank you, Chairperson.
Uthi makakhabe ibamba leyo ngoba uzawufunda phaa ke ngoku standing order 262 ngoku.
And that one says, if negotiations fail, which on your version has happened, and life or property is in danger, which was also had happened, the following procedure must be followed. And then on number 1 says, put defensive measures in place as a priority. Is that the same sentiment of if there's a danger to life or property, the priority should be non-violent stroke defensive measures being put in place?
Nje kuthiwa ke ngoku ukuba ke ngoku ngathi ubomi babantu busemngciphekweni nokuba kungenzeka into yoba kubekho umonakalo owenziwa kwimpahla indlela ke ngoku yenyathelo lokhuselo kufuneka bayenze engumnqa okanye eyona ibalulekileyo into yoba basebenzise indlela apho bangasebenzisi idushe khona.
Presies wat dit sê, voorsitter, om defensiewe maatreëls in plek te sit.
Precisely what it says, Mr. President, to put defensive measures in place.
Ngaphandle ewe kukubeka ke ngokwenza inyathelo eli lokhuselo.
And therefore, if that is true, then would you agree with the statement which I put to you yesterday just before we stopped? Namely that the enclosed area should preferably have been protected by the employment of barbed wire stroke defensive measures rather than a gun-wielding line of people with semi-automatic rifles.
Ukuba kunjalo ke uvumelana nami into yokuba ke ngokulandawo leya bivaliwe bekufuneke ba kuvalwe kuyo ngocingo oluhlaba endaweni yokuba bekho lamapolisa ayime ngemipu le idubula izitshintsha.
Voorsitter, die lede wat daar ontplooi was is deel van die magsvertoon. Dit is ook 'n aanvaarbare praktyk in terme van om reservemagte vorentoe te beweeg, om 'n magsvertoon om dan aggressiewe aksies te ontmoedig.
Mr. Chairperson, the members who were deployed there were deployed in terms of regulations as part of the show of force to discourage that kind of action.
Ngoke amalunga athunyelwe phaya yenziwa lonto kulandelwa imimiselo ke abebonisa amandla abo kakhona ukutyhafisa abantu kuba bangathathi elo nyathelo.
Yes, I accept that. Sorry.
Magsvertoon is uiters belangrik en dit het al oor baie jare.
Show of force is very important and it has worked over many years.
Dit het baie goeie gevolge gehad voor
it had very good results.
Ke ngoku uthi ke ngoku ilento yokubonisa amandla isebenze kakhulu iminyaka emidlulileyo emininzi kwaye yaba neziphumo ezincomekayo kakhulu.
En dis dan 'n kombinasie van hulpbronne wat insluit menslike hulpbronne maar dan ook die voertuie, waterkanonne ensovoorts.
This is a combination, Chairperson, of armed vehicles, water cannons and human resource.
Ke lonto iquka ke ngokuyikanuni ezamanzi kwakunye nengqwelo ezixhotyisiweyo.
General, I'm afraid you have not answered my question. My question is a comparative one, and please listen to it carefully. Even accepting what you're saying, let's accept that the show of force method was meant to discourage any attack or breach. All I'm asking you is this. And as background, you and I agreed yesterday that there was at least 200 meters of wire available. So there was the means and there was the opportunity. Given that background, would it comparatively not have been preferable to achieve that very goal of discouraging an attack, to employ the non-violent defensive methods prescribed in what I read to you, rather than to achieve that object with a line of gun-wielding policemen with semi-automatic rifles?
Into ndibuza yona into yokubana ke ngokupha kusasithuba bendithetha ngaso kuwe bengazoba bhetele na ukuba kwabekwa olucingo oluhlabayo kwavalwa ngalo ndaweni yokuba kuzomiswa kulaa ndawo amapolisa ayenemipu le idubula izitshintsha.
Voorsitter, maar beide die ontplooiing was nie gewelddadig. Beide die draad as 'n defensiewe maatreël as ook die ontplooiing van hulpbronne. So dit was die een en die ander gesamentlik en beide is nie gewelddadig. Dit is 'n magsvertoon, is nie gewelddadig.
Both the measures used there, Mr. Chairperson, the show of force, the deployment of the wire are both non-violent means of
omabini ke lamanyathelo ke
approaches.
omabini lamanyathelo ke ayo ngamanyathelo dushe la okubonisa amandla kunye ke ngoku nokutsalwa kolucingo ke ngoku luhlabayo.
Yes, but I'm talking about the potential of the two measures. The one measure at worst would have resulted in a few people rupturing their skins against barbed wire if they were stupid enough to go against it. The other measure resulted in 34 deaths, or at least 16, let's leave it to the gap, 16, and it could have resulted in hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands, of other deaths. Don't you think that that is a crucial distinction between the potential between those two measures, if they were pitted against each other?
Ukuba ke ukula manyathelo mabini uthetha ngawo singakwazi wathelekisa uthi na kuba ucingo oluhlabayo olu ukuba abantu babezama ukuthi balitsibe mhlawumbe kanye baye kulo babezawusikwa lilo endaweni yokuba apho bekuzomisa amapolisa khona fumanise ukuthi abantu abaninzi abayi-16 bade basweleka kanye kwakunosoleka ngaphezulu ngenxa yemipu yayisetyenziswa apho.
Voorsitter, ek het getuig dat wat ons nou weet in nabetragting
Mr. Chairperson, I have given evidence that what we now know and with hindsight,
sendinike ke ngokubungqina ke ukuyinto siyaziyo nento ke ngokwesiyenzeke emva kwesithonga.
Sou ek 'n totale area heeltemal afgekordon het met slegs 'n ingang wat beheer is.
I would have cordoned the whole area with only an entrance.
Controlled entrance.
Limited entrance that was controlled, I think you said. Or
That
small
was
entrance that was
on
controlled.
only a controlled entrance.
Ndanothi yonke laa nto ndiyivale ke ngoku kwenzela uba apho kungenwa khona ibe indawo ejongiweyo encinci kakhulu elawulwayo.
Voorsitter, maar ons het beplan het, was ons vas oortuig dat die ontplooiing van die draad by die
But,
nagsvertoon sou voldoende gewees het om enige sodanige aanval te ontmoedig.
According to our plan, we had planned in such a manner that the deployment of the barbed wires with the people would be sufficient to discourage any act.
Indlela esenze ngayo isicwangciso sayenze ngendlela yokuba ke ngusabona into yoba ukukhutshwa kwecingo lihlabayo yayizoba yinto eyaneleyo leyo.
Die bedoeling was ook om al 6 draadkarre te ontplooi, maar die omstandighede het dit nie toegelaat nie en gevolglik was daar net 4 ontplooi.
The intention was, Mr. Chairperson, to deploy all 6 barbed wires, but the circumstances were such that could not be done.
Injongo yethu ngokuba ke ngoku zoyi-6 ezahipho zikhupha ucingo lihlabayo kodwa ngenxa yemeko yayilapho zange ikwazi ukwenzeka loo nto leyo.
No, General, you can't be serious. You and I established yesterday, we're not talking about the whole area, we're talking about the small area of 25 meters. We established that the barbed wire was available. So I don't know what you mean that they could not deploy it. I mean, surely they could have. But
You say there wasn't time.
well, exactly. We also established that there was at least more than 2 minutes, and it does not take. Well, I don't know how long it takes, but surely it can take more than 2 minutes to deploy a small gap of 25 meters. So that we established yesterday that there was the means and the opportunity. And in any event, the issue is not a question of hindsight. It's actually the opposite. It's a question of foresight. Because the people who drafted these things, well, it was an exercise in foresight. And when they said, when life is in danger and all those things, put defensive measures in place as a priority in the future, not looking backward. Would you agree with that?
Masingathethi ngento ke ulwazi olufumaneke emva uba isiganeko senzekile ngokuba isicwangciso senziwe ke ngokwento eyayingekenzeki ngoba le nto yayithethwe ngento yoba izawuba yinto eyokuqala not into eseyidlulile. Uvumelana kuloo nto leyo?
Voorsitter, ek is seker dat die 2 nyalas wat nie ontplooi het nie sal die betrokke bevelvoerders kan aandui hoekom nie.
I am sure, Chairperson, that the 2 nyalas whose barbed wire was not deployed, the commanders would be able to explain what happened, why they could not do so.
Oh, yeah.
Qinisekile ndazezahipho zimbini zange zikhuphe ucingo lihlabayo bazawuchaza into yoba kutheni iloo nto ingazange yenzeke nje xa belapha.
Ek moet net die praktiese ontplooiing van draadkarre moet ek sover ek bewus is daarvan vir u verduidelik.
I just want to explain the deployment of barbed wire as far as I know, Mr. Chair.
Funa ke uchaza ngendlela endazi ngayo ke ngokutsalwa kocingo olu lihlabayo.
Voorsitter, ons ry nie in die nyala en dan druk ons 'n knoppie en dan begin hierdie draad ontplooi nie.
We don't get into a nyala and press a button and the wire starts coming out.
Asikhweli ke kwihipho sicofa iqhosha ucingo lihlabayo livele ko litsaleke ngokwalo.
Daar is lede wat buite die voertuig moet staan met dik handskoene wat hulle self beskerm teen die lemmetjiesstraat.
There would be members standing outside with thick hand gloves to protect themselves whilst this wire is being pulled and in support of it.
Ngelixesha utsala ucingo ke kukho amalungu azobe ngaphandle phethe imiphini epeki akwazi ukukhusela ngayo.
Daar's 3 rolle van hierdie draad, 2 onder en 1 bo op dit.
There are 3 rolls of this wire, 2 above and 1 underneath. 2 underneath and 1 above.
Iirolo ke ezintathu ke zolucingo lihlabayo ezingezantsi zimbini kubekho enye ngaphezulu.
So aanvanklik moet die draad met dit afgehak word en dan moet daai voertuig beweeg en dan is dit in praktyk hak dit baie keer vas, dan moet dit eers losgehak word want dit gaan van dit is reëlings kan ek nou maar sê wat hierdie draad ophang sodat dak vas is dit ontplooi word.
Mr. Chairperson, the wire first has to be loosened and then it has got to be pulled. It gets tight as it goes on because it has got these bulbs that have got to be loosened.
Ke ngoku ucingo liyakhululwa kuqala lize litsalwe kodwa liye libambeke ngoba kaloku khole izinto ingathi zingameva ke ngoku entsimbi ezithi ziye zibambane ngelinye ixesha.
Voorsitter, is een ding om dit te ontplooi terwyl daar nie 'n pertinente dreigement is nie, en 'n ander ding.
One way, it's a different thing deploying it when there is nothing happening, when there is no threat, Mr. Chairperson.
Ke indlela ekhutshwa ngayo xa kungenzeka into ayifani iba into eyahlukileyo xa litsalwa ke licinga kungenzeka into.
Maar 'n ander ding is daar pertinente bedreiging is.
And a different one if there is a pertinent threat.
Iba yenye indlela eyahlukileyo ke ngoku xa kukho isigrogriso esibonakalayo uba sikho.
En ek weet nie, Brigadier Kalitz of of kolonel Makobela of enige van die betrokke bevelvoerders kan getuig of dit so was dat draadkar 4 reeds afgehaak was sodat hy kan begin ontplooi, maar draadkar 5 en 6 was nog nie gewees nie. Ek weet werklik nie wat die pertinente rede was hoekom hulle nie kon verder gaan met
I am not
ontplooi.
sure of the pertinent reasons why these were not, but I take it that Brigadier Kalitz or Colonel Makobela, who they would be able to give the exact reasons why this happened.
Andiyazi uba kutheni ingenzekanga loo nto leyo ke nezizathu zokuba kutheni ingenzekanga kodwa ndiqinisekile into yobana ke uBrigadier Kalitz noColonel Makobela bazayicacisa xa belapha loo nto leyo.
Okay, General, we'll ask them. Would you turn to L191?
Sicela ke ngokuye kuxwebhu lamapolisa ophaa ku L191.
You've already referred to the 80-meter distance between the strikers and the row of nyalas. You see that's depicted by the yellow line.
Merk die geel lyn op en die 80 meter is korrek, voorsitter.
I see the yellow line and the 80 meters there, Mr. Chairperson.
Yes.
Ewe ndiyawubona umgxelo omthubi ke ngoku neemitha ezingamashumi asibhozo.
And then the other yellow line further down is the 50-meter yellow line. The question I want to ask you is, would you agree that what we've previously referred to as the horseshoe arrangement formed by those nyalas defined the demarcated area, the protected area?
Landa uvumelana mntu oba yile khangatyhu okanye ichaziweyo phaa kuzotywe kuyo ke ngoku ibonisa ke kule ndawo iyayikhuselwe.
Voorsitter, nee, die beskermde gebied word aangedui deur die 6 nyalas en dan die potensiële area wat die 6de nyala nog addisioneel sou dek in terme van sy ontplooiing.
No, Mr. Chairperson, the protected area is depicted by the 5 nyalas with the 6 nyalas.
Hayi ngoba le ndawo ikhusiliweyo ile kume kuyo ke ngokanye uvalwe ngayo ngeza hippo zi-6.
So your earlier evidence of the 80 meters, sorry, Chairman.
Actually an L format.
Yes, in other words, your earlier evidence that it was defined by the 80-meter gap, so to speak, should be, you are amending that now?
Ukuya itshintshele buyithethe ngaphambili into yobana le ngingqi le ile ibiboniswa ngeza mitha ke zingamashumi asibhozo.
Voorsitter, ek het verwys na die 80 meter tussen die lede en die polisielyn. As die lyn 5 meter agter daai lyn is, dit is in die beplanning het ons gesê so wat 80 meter. Niemand het dit gaan uitmeet om dan presies te sê dit in die lyn wees nie. So
Mr. Chairperson, this was according to plan. The 80 meters is the distance between the police line and the protesters. If there's a 5 extra meter or so, nobody went out there to go and actually measure this area.
Konke le ngokosicwangciso ke ngoku ezi mitha zingamashumi asibhozo yayingumgama mapolisa ke ngoku umgama ophakathi kwayo kunye nabaqhankqalazi kodwa nangona ngekho mntu owathi xa bepha wahamba uyokumejarisha.
Okay, well, that will live for argument. That's what defines the enclosure on the western side. On the northern side, you'd agree that it was that horseshoe arrangement was defined by the 50-meter line, yellow line, correct?
Kuyindlela kumiwe ngayo phaa kubhalwe ama imitha ezingamashumi amahlanu yile ndlela athetha ngayo ke kuye le ushu.
Voorsitter, nee, Njala 6 sou nog so wat 80 meter, miskien 100 meter in terme van die volle strekking van die draad sou nog in 'n oostelike rigting beweeg het.
Chairperson, the other Nyala 5 would have deployed, Nyala 6 would have deployed another 80 or 100 meters in an easterly direction.
Ikuthi ke ngoku apho bekunofakwa ezinye inyala ezintandathu apho kwicala elilinga ngase mpuma.
Well, okay, so on that version then, you see that there are people in slide 191 who are walking on the path that that goes in front of the kraal.
Yabona phaa ku slide 191 kukho abantu abamba phaa kulaa ndlela ihamba phambi kobuhlanti.
Ek merk persone op, voorsitter.
I see people there, yes, Chairperson.
Ndiyababona abantu phaya.
Maybe it would be easier if we use them as a reference. Would you agree that those people who were walking there had not breached the police line, or are you saying they had?
Uvumelana nami into yokuba abantu ke ngoku babengaphumelanga okanye befike phaa kulaa mgca wamapolisa okanye uthi babenze njalo na?
Voorsitter, by die stadium was die lyn nog nie ontplooi nie, maar in terme van die posisionering van die Njalas is hulle buitekant die laaste Njala.
We were outside the last Nyala and the line was not deployed at that stage, Mr. Chairperson.
Babengaphandle ke kwenyala leyokugqibela ihipo ngela xesha ke la mapolisa emzumgca engekami ngela xesha.
I see. So this demarcated area was a moving target. It was not a static as is required in the regulations. It was not a static defined police line. It was wherever you determined it to be.
Ke ngoku le ndlela lo mgca wamapolisa engesumgca abantu abamileyo kodwa yayingabahambayo ngayi ngale ndlela ke kubhalwe ngayo kumaxwebhu amapolisa.
Voorsitter, nee, die enigste mobiliteit sal wees terwyl die Njalas beweeg om die statiese lyn daar te stel.
The only mobility would have then been determined when the Nyala started moving there to determine that line.
Into yenza uba le nto yokuba kukho mgca ixhomekeke kwakuzokuba kukuhamba ke ngoku kwezahipo.
General, please, let's try and help each other. When those people were walking in front of the kraal, you are saying that at this stage they were not breaching the police line. In other words, the police line at that stage did not include that path in front of the kraal.
Uthi ngeli xesha yokuba abantu babehamba phambi kobuhlanti amapolisa ke ngoku babengadluli kanye bengenela phaa kumapolisa ngoba ngela xesha amapolisa engenzanga mgca okanye imgcibo ebenzile wayengaquki laa ndawo iphambi kobuhlanti.
Sorry, before you answer, and I say that because we can assume that they walked there knowing that they are not walking into the horseshoe, but within that 50-meter gap. And now you can answer.
Nditsho njalo into yoba ndithi mhlawumbi babesazi into yoba bayahamba phaa bangabi kulaa ndawo ndithi ingathi le ntsimbi ke indlela emile ngayo ingathi intsimbi ingena phantsi kweenyawo lehashe.
Voorsitter, ek te sê die statiese versperring was nog nie ontplooi nie.
I say the static obstruction was not deployed as yet, Mr. Chairperson.
Ewe kwakungekabekwa sithintelo okanye mqobo phaya.
En ek te sê die mense op daai voetpaadjie waarna verwys word is buite die laaste Njala wie beoog om die verdere versperring te ontplooi.
And I also said the group of people who the one sees there are walking outside the line which was to be where the last Nyala was to deploy.
Sibona bahamba ngaphandle komgca ke abantu apho kuloo ndawo ke ihipo yokugqibela kwakufuneke itsale ucingo khona.
So in other words, the place in front of the kraal, that road or path, as at 1540, when the people had started dispersing, was not, strictly speaking, within the police line. It was a free place where people could move, and indeed moved, in and out of the copy.
La ndledlana siyibonayo kepha njengoba sibona ngemzuzu engamashumi 2 phambi kwensimbi yesine apho abantu beqala ukuhlakazeka khona yayingasiyinxalenye yendawo yayingumgca wamapolisa.
Alles buite die betrokke voertuie sou buite die polisie kordongebied gewees het.
Any place outside the police cordon area, the police vehicles was outside the police area.
Ewe yonke indawo engapha ke ngokwendawo kwakuma amapolisa okanye mhlawumbi kukho inqolo zamapolisa yayingaphandle ke kwale ndawo yamapolisa ame kuyo.
General, okay, I'll take one step back. Were you, since you're in the chalk and not on the scene, you might not have been aware of this. Were you aware that for the day, since about 6 o'clock, up to that time, people to come and go into the copy were using that path in front of the, mainly using that path in front of the crawl?
Mhlawumbi awunawo yazi ngoba ixesha elininzi buwapha kujoko kodwa buyazi na into yokuba abantu xa besiya naxa bebuya phaa entabeni babesebenzisa laa ndledlana iphambi kobuhlanti.
Ek was bewus dat persone uit alle windrigtings die koppie benader het, so dit kan insluit die betrokke pad en verskeie ander paaie.
Mr. Chairperson, I was aware of the fact that people were coming from all directions, all wind directions, and they could have walked there as well.
Into endandiyazi into abantu babesuka behamba kwindlela ezahlukeneyo kodwa nalapho bebenohamba.
Do those all directions include people walking on the path in front of the crawl?
To say yes, that includes.
He didn't. Okay.
He said it not recants.
No, well, he was disputing the statement I was making that they mainly come from there. That's why I was compromising.
Okay, anyway, let's get clarity. I'm correct in saying that you did say that people came from all directions, including walking along the path to which council referred. Is that so?
Voorsitter, ek het die woord gebruik insluitend, potensieel insluitend oor die betrokke pad.
Which
Yes, the road in question.
And the police were there since the morning. The question is, those people who were walking up and down that path in front of the crawl were not breaching the police line. Would you agree with me?
Ke ngoku abantu babenyuka besihla bedlula kulaa ndlela epha ngobuhlanti babengengeneleli kumgca wamapolisa uvumelana nam kuloo nto leyo?
Dit is correct, voorsitter.
That's correct, Mr. Chairperson.
Njalo sihlalo.
So the people who were at the copy, at least those who were interested in going to Kaneng, and those who had come through that path, knew for sure that that path does not constitute, or rather walking on that path does not constitute breaching the police line, because they had just done so in the past 6 or 8 hours.
Uvumelana into yokuba ke ngoku abantu babehamba phaa okanye baphaa entabeni nabo babehamba phaa kulaa ndlela bayisebenzisa yona babesazi into yokuba bona bangeneleli kumgca okanye kwindawo yamapolisa ngoba lonke ixesha eli bebehamba ngayo laa ndlela.
Voorsitter, kan nie veralgemeniseer dat almal op die koppie die betrokke pad gebruik het. So sekerlik die enkele persone wat die pad gebruik het kon bewus wees, maar om te gaan sê dat mense wat van die weste kant af gekom het of van die noorde kant af dat hulle ook sodanig bewus was, is sekerlik 'n bietjie aanname.
Chairperson, we cannot generalize that everybody who was on the copy had used that word. People that came from the western side and from the northern side wouldn't, but the people who walked there would have been aware of this.
Ngoke asinavele sithi bonke abantu bebehamba ngayo laa ndlela kodwa abantu bebevela ngocala ke kulasentshona nasentla bebengenawo hamba ngayo kodwa abantu babehamba ngayo bona bebenoyazi loo nto leyo.
Yes, that's exactly why, General, I did not generalize. That's why I said those people who had walked there in the morning. But be that as it may. The evidence, you cannot dispute, or rather you're not in a position to dispute the evidence of Mr. Makidiwana that after Mr. Matunja's departure and after the deployment of the first two Nyalas with barbed wire, Mr. Noki said words to the following effect: let us leave this place, let us walk to the residential area, let us not run because we have done nothing wrong.
Uthi ke ngoku awunoyiphikisa intetho ethethwe ngumhlekazi uMagidwana kubungqina bakhe ngexesha wayisithi emveni bakhe ngokemkile umhlekazi uMathunjwa kubeni iihipi ezimbini ezitsalwe ngomhlabayo wathi umhlekazi uNoki masambeni kule ndawo masizambeleni nje ngoba akho nto siyenzile asonanga.
Ek was nie teenwoordig nie, ek aanvaar as getuienis voor die kommissie.
I wasn't present, Chairperson. I accept that is evidence before this commission.
Into endingayitsho ba loo nto ke ubungqina bulapha kule commission kodwa ndandingekho apho mna.
Yes, well, that evidence, as it happens, was not disputed by the police in cross-examination. So it stands that Mr. Noki said, let us walk, let us not run, let us leave this place. We have done nothing wrong.
Uthi ke ngoku loo nto khange iphikiswe nalapha ke ngexesha wayethethwa apha ngoba wathi masambe yena masingabalekeni ngoba akho nto irongo siyenzileyo.
So assuming that that is what happened, because we don't have any evidence to the contrary. This is why the issue of the path, the path that you and I have been discussing is so critical, General, to the determination of the issues in this case. Because when the evidence of Mr. Makidwan once again is that in complying, for lack of a better word, with what Mr. Noki had said, they chose to, like everybody else, like all these people in 191 and so on, to use that path in front of the crawl to comply with Mr. Noki's command or request.
Would
you accept that?
Kidwana kubeni bona besenza lento iya ithethwa kumfi uNoki baye bakhetha kusebenza kwalendlela babehamba ngayo ngaphambili.
Dan is my interpretasie van die foto's dan heeltemal verkeerd.
Then it means my interpretation of the photos would then be totally incorrect.
Lonto iyawuthetha into ba indlela entolika ngayo lemifanekiso izobe ingafanelekanga.
Want as dit so was, dan wonder ek hoekom het hulle dan beweeg na Nyala 4 se posisie toe waar daar geen sodanige voetpad of pad is nie.
Because if that is the position, Chairperson, then I don't see the reason why they walked towards Nyala 4 where there was no path.
Ukuba kunjalo ke ukwandiyazi into ba kutheni bahambe bayaphanga kuyihipo yesine apho kwakungekho ndlela khona.
En hoekom het hulle dan direk noord beweeg op die pad wat daar aangedui word en dan gedraai in 'n rigting oos om dan hierdie betrokke voetpad wat u na verwys te volg nie.
Why they did not move slightly northwards and then east to come to the path that you now referring to.
Kutheni bengazange bahambe kucala langa kopha entla baphinde baye ngasempuma bazokwazi ukufika kule ndlela ke ngoku uthetha ngayo.
So my eie interpretasie is dan is my baie vreemd as dit dan die pad was wat almal gebruik het, wat almal van bewus was dat hulle dan nie pertinent die pad dan gevat het om dan Kaneng te gaan nie.
Means my interpretation is then altogether incorrect if they did not choose the path that the majority of the people were walking to, that we say we're going to Kaneng.
Ke ngoku ukuba ke ngoku abakhetha ngalandlela isetyenziswa ngabantu bonke babesiya ngayo phaya eNkaneng lo ndithetha into ba indlela ke ngoku mna inditolika ngayo yonke kanye ndibona ngayo lento imifanekiso ayindlela efanelekileyo.
Well, that can be so, General. If you look at picture 194.
Ayinoba njalo, General. Uba ungajonga ke ngoku umfanekiso 194.
Which shows the direction of the crowd according to the police.
Ebonisa ke ngoku indawo abaya kuyo kanye abakuyo inginginya le into ke ngoku ethethwa ngamapolisa leyo.
According to the police, that orange line depicts the direction of the crowd And that accords with the version of Mr. Makidiwana that they walked there in order to pass through that gap between the kraal and the road, and those nyalas. It is true that, as you say, Nyala 4 then closed that gap. And that's exactly why they then wanted to access the same road, because they know the area, by going around the kraal, which they did.
Uthi ke ngoku njeme bonso ke ngoku lendawo ba bephumela kuyo pha kulamgca uorange uthi baphumela pha kodwa bavalwa yihipo yesine kodwa babesiya pha kulandela ngoba bona bayazi lendlela ilonto ke ngoku babejikela ngapha yakobuhlanti.
Voorsitter, maar dis juist my punt. Hulle het dan juist nie op die pad gebly wat hulle dan gebruik het om na die koppie toe te gaan nie.
That's exactly my point,
Mr. Pad na die pad toe.
They did not use the road that leads to. They took a shorter way to get to the road.
Ilento ngondithethayo ndithi babesebenzisa indlela ke ngoku emfutshane ukuba bazokwazi ukufika kuyo lo ndlela.
Voorsitter, en as ons na slide 193 kyk, dan sal jy sien waar die groepie omsingel is of omkring is met 'n rooi kring.
Dan if you look at slide 193, Mr. Chairperson, where they are circled in red.
Dan aan hulle regterkant, soos ons na die foto kyk, is daar dan 'n meer natuurlike pad wat sal basies net so by die Nyala wat Nyala nommer 5 is, sou kon verby beweeg het.
On their right-hand side, there's a direct path there that would have taken them past the Nyala 5.
Pha ke ngoku L993 yabonisa pha into ba kukho apho kwenziwe isangqa isibomvu apho kubonakala indlela babe bengahamba baya ngasekunene babeza uhamba kuloo ndlela leyo badlule pha kule hipo yesihlanu.
Yes, the evidence is that that part of the, and once again, this is not disputed evidence, that part is blocked by a fence which, if my memory serves me well, runs for about 260 meters before you would be able to access the township. But that's not the issue. The issue is it is not. It can be correct. It can be correct that they took a shorter route. Actually, they took a longer route, because from where they are at the point of the orange line, the shortest way to access the road is a matter of a few meters. But they deviated from that shorter route because Nyala 4 closed that road and took a longer turn around the kraal to access the road. That's the evidence.
Ke into endithethayo into okubana ke ngokubungqondo bulapha zange bathatha indlela emfutshane bathatha leya inde indlela isathu salondele ngokuba ihipo le yesine kaloku yaye yavala indlela.
Voorsitter, ek en advokaat Mpofu praat verby mekaar. Ek praat daar's geen draad
We are talking
in die
at
paadjie waarna
crossroads.
ek verwys nie.
I am referring to
Daar's geen draad nie.
there is no wire there.
Akho cingo lalukho phayana.
Voorsitter, as ons kyk na 193 en ons kyk na waar die groepie is, omkring met rooi,
If we look at 193, Mr. Chairperson, slide, where the group is circled in red,
Basijonga pha ke ngoku kuxoxela amapolisa 193 apho eliqela ke ngoku benzelwe isangqa isibomvu.
en ons kyk na die wit pyl en sy punt, dit klink vir my min of meer wat advokaat Mpofu na verwys waar hulle
look at the white line in a southerly direction. I think that's where Advocate Mpofu is referring to.
Uba singajonga ke ngoku na kulamgca omhlophe apha ngezantsi yaye ngicimba uthetha ngalandawo ke ngoku yena uadvocate Mpofu.
dan sal u merk dat daar 'n pertinente pad is aan die regterkant van die groepie soos wat ons daarna kyk.
You will realize that there is a path to the right-hand side of the group.
Awujongile uyabona pha ngasekunene kwiqela elikhona indlela ekho.
En die pad lei na Nyala nommer 5. Jy sal sien Nyala nommer 5 staan basies op die betrokke pad.
This road leads to Nyala number 5. You'd seen Nyala number 5 is stopped on that road.
Le ndlela ikhokelela pha kula hipo yesihlanu siyayibona ke ngoku ihipo yesihlanu pha kula ndlela.
So my eie interpretasie, die kortste roete tussen waar die groepie gekonsentreer is en om dan te kom by daai klein kraal area by die punt van die wit pyl.
My interpretation then of the shortest route between where the group was to come to where the white arrow is.
Indlela ke ngokwendingayitsho ba indlela emfutshane xa besiya phaa kulaa ndawo kukho laa mgca umhlophe.
Sou dan eenvoudig wees om op die pad te beweeg, om te beweeg om Nyala 5 en dan aan te gaan in die noorde kant van Nyala 6 en dan deur daai gaping te beweeg.
My interpretation would then have been to walk past Nyala 5 and then in a direction past Nyala 6.
U sal merk dat Nyala 4 is dan so iets wat in verkeerde rigting om dan nou weer weg te draai in daai rigting, so dit maak nie vir my sin dat dit die kortste pad is nie.
You would realize that Nyala 4 is standing in such a way that it would be a wrong direction to go in that way. That would not have been the shortest route.
Njengoba sijongile ke babe benothi indlela emfutshane babe benoyithatha kugqitha phaa kulaa hipho yesihlanu ngasentla bagqithe nakule yesithandathu ngokuba kaloku ubizawuba indlela engerongo ukuba bebezawudlula phaa ngakwi-hipho leya yesine.
General, yeah, maybe you're right, we're speaking for Baymaker. Are you actually disputing, are you at picture 194?
Uyayiphikisa ke ngoku le nto ilapha kulo mfanekiso
If you're not, just go there.
Voorsitter, nee, 194 verstaan ek waar die geel pyl is, dit is wat hulle posisie was, vorige posisie, en dat hulle toe ombeweeg het na daai posisie toe, so dit wys net weer eens, dit was nie 'n direkte beweging vanaf die gebied wat hulle aanvanklik was,
194,
einde van die oranje pyl nie.
Mr. Chairperson shows the original place where they were and the direction in which they move, and then turned around to the orange arrow.
Okay.
Le umgca ke ngoku umthubi ubonisa apho babekhona ke ngoku kwaye phaa ku-194 kwaye li-orange ibonisa intoba baye bajika ndawoni na.
Mr. Mpofu, the fence you're referring to is the fence around the informal settlement.
Yes, it was that, but I see that there's...
But there's no fence in the road that the general is referring to.
Yeah,
there's no fence there.
Yeah, there might not be. Then I'm not referring to that at all. Then it's irrelevant to what I'm asking him. Can you go to 194?
Ku 194.
Look at the point, the sharp point of the arrow, of the orange arrow.
Masijonge ukule ndawo ingathi litolo phambili kwincam phaa kwengokulaa mgca u-orange.
You said that point?
Yayibona le ndawo ndithetha ngayo?
Yes.
Would you agree that the shortest and straightest way to move from that sharp point to the path that is in front of the kraal is a matter of a few meters that is defined by that smaller road leading to the bigger one, where these people are apparently walking? In other words, if you continue on a straight line from the sharp point, that's the shortest possible route. Let's say you were going to that kraal, let's say, for argument's sake. The entrance of the kraal is marked with an X, hopefully on yours as well. If you're going there, you're going to fetch your cow. The shortest possible route would have been to continue along that sharp point and get into the entrance. Yes? No?
Ke ngoku uvumela nam into yoba eyona ndlela ingathi sibona i-straight kwaye imfutshane kukho iimitha ezimbalwa kuyo ibizoba yiyo leya, ingakumbi mhlawumbi masithi phaa ebuhlanti kukho mhlawumbi inkomo yakho buthi uyokuyiqhuba kanye uyoyithatha phaa kwaba buhlanti.
Voorsitter, ek kan nie ja of nee antwoord nie. Ons moet dit sien in terme van waar die aanvanklike beweging plaasgevind het. Ons kan dit nie ignoreer en net fokus op die posisie nou op slide 194 nie.
We cannot only focus now on the position that is indicated. It's important to note from where originally they were.
Voorsitter, just to answer the question, please.
Asawujongisa ke ngoku kwinantsika kuyimzekelo kanye into oyithethayo kodwa masijonge apho besiya khona ayitshoyo ayithethayo ke umhlekazi uMpofu into yoba phendulayo yena umbuzo qha.
Ek is besig om die vraag te probeer antwoord.
I'm busy trying to answer the question, Mr. Chairperson.
Ndisathi ndizama uphendula ke umbuzo wakho lo.
Voorsitter, as ons 193 die posisie van die groep oorplaas op 194, dan sal u merk dat daar so 'n klein koppie en dan sal daar so 'n kruispad. En dan ons dan gaan kyk waar hulle was. Dit is basies by die begin van die geel pyl.
Taking 193 into consideration and then placing them on 194, Mr. Chairperson, there is the beginning of the yellow line. That's where they are placed. The yellow arrow, yes?
Voorsitter,
ukuba besinodibanisa 193 no194 le mifanekiso besawubona apha bakhona ke ngoku badityaniswa phaa kulaa mgca umthubi.
in die konteks dan sou die direkte beweging met die pad wat ek vroeër aangedui het, die kortste pad gewees het na die bestemming wat meneer Mpofu na verwys.
The shortest direction would be in a straight line, as Mr. Mpofu is putting it.
Ewe yona ke indlela imfutshane ke ngoku kukuhamba xa umntu ehamba straight njengoba betshilo naye ke ngoku advocate Mpofu.
Maar ons weet dat daar eerste beweging was in die rigting soos die geel pyl aandui.
But we know that the movement was as direct as in the direction of the yellow arrow.
Siyazi uba indlela babehambe kuyo yile kuboniswa ngayo phaa kukho laa mgca ke ngoku umthubi.
En die volgende beweging was dan soos min of meer aangedui deur die boog van die oranje pyl.
The second move was as it is shown by the bow of the orange arrow.
Lo ngexesha behamba kwesibini kulapho kuboniswa khona kakhulu apha ngakumbi kule ncam yalaa mgca u-orange.
So om net eenvoudig te antwoord ja, vanaf die punt van die oranje boogpyl na die kruis by die kraal is die kortste pad, sal dit nie in die korrekte konteks plaas nie.
To say yes, the shortest distance would have been from the end of the orange line straight to the road would not be correct.
Yokuthi ke ngoku uba eyona ndlela emfutshane kukuqala phaa kulaa ncam yalaa mgca okanye uphela khona laa mgca u-orange uyotsho phaa kulaa ndawo ayinyani ukuba xa kuthiwa loo nto le ndawo indlela emfutshane leyo.
Okay, well, I'm going to take it that you don't want to answer the question. Or I'll repeat it for the last time.
Mr. Mpofu, I don't think you can put it like that. You can argue maybe that
I will.
That he's evading the
first I must take it, then I'll argue.
Right,
I'll do both.
Sorry?
I'm saying I'll do both. I'll assume he doesn't want to answer it and I'll argue as well.
But you can make whatever assumptions you like.
Yes.
At the end of the day, you must argue that we should make the same assumptions.
I will, yeah.
You may succeed, you may not.
I may not, yeah. But in case I don't succeed, can I just ask you the question again? It's simple. If you were, General, standing at the sharp point of the orange line, and you owned a cow, and you wanted to get into the kraal, would you agree that the shortest way to take from that point would be to continue straight and enter where the X is? Yes or no?
Masithi ke ngokuba ke ngobume kulaa ndawo laa mgca uphela khona lu orange apho le ndawo ngathi yincam yetolo kwaye mhlawumbi sithi kuba buhlanti ubunenkomo yakho phaya buzawuhamba kulaa ndlela buzongena.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, just to understand the question, I have problems with the colors because listening to the question, I understand my learned friend to be referring to what I see as yellow instead of orange. And then below it, there is the curving horseshoe-like darker shade of what may be a yellow, I don't know. And then there's what I see as an orange, also curving like a horseshoe, and the sharp point or the end of the orange is where the shooting took place.
Okay.
No. The way it works is the arrow which is the top of the three arrows, the straight arrow, which is apparently the first attempt to breach the line, that's yellow. Then there's an arch or a bow, curved arrow. That's what's called orange. And then the final one, which goes round the kraal, is called the red one.
Thank you.
Those are the colours as we understand them. I understand that if one had one of those colour things that you get from the paint shop, you might have slightly different colours, but that's what we're talking about.
Lo wokuqala phezulu umthubi ibe ngo-orange olandelayo, omnye lo wokugqibela ke ngolapha ngasebuhlanti ingathi wenze ungu wona kuthiwa ubomvu.
Voorsitter, as ons alles ignoreer voordat hierdie groep op die betrokke einde van die oranje boog en by die punt gekom het, dan is dit verseker van die punt na die kraal toe die kortste pad. Ek bedoel, dit is net eenvoudig logies dat van daai punt na die kraal toe is dit die kortste pad.
Mr. Chairperson, if we ignore everything, that taking that line up to the end of the orange line, from there to the crowd, that would naturally be the shortest distance.
Thank you.
Ewe xa binaba indlela nyani emfutshane ke ukuba sinoya singakumbi siye apho lamgca u-orange uphela khona.
Chair, just one quick aspect before we take the tea. I'm moving to something else now, General. Well, it's something else, but it's related. You remember I said to you that the path, the reason why I'm spending so much time is that the issue of that path is important for the reasons that I've explained to you. But it's also important for another crucial reason in this commission. Mr. Makidiwana testified that, let me take one step back. Our version is that there was no attack. That's one of the reasons that we're going to say self-defense was not an issue. Because as you and I have agreed earlier, for self-defense there must be an attack. So our version is that there was no attack. So you can't even move to step one of self-defense if there's no attack. You understand that? Now, in justifying that conclusion, Mr. Makidiwana testified as follows. He said, I would understand if the police had shot us not before we reached the path. And by that he meant this. He said that these two versions. We say we were going to Nkaneng. The police say we were attacking them. And he says the only way you would have determined that is what happens when you reach the road. Because if you reach the road, if you are attacking, you're going to cross the road, obviously, because the police are there. Whereas if you're going to Nkaneng, when you reach the road, you're going to turn left. I'm paraphrasing what Mr. Makidiwana was saying when he said, I would understand if the police had shot us